anh on an nang ting cham wa mi mo toi ta nai cho chi ho ta na pong ye bua chi chian na yếm phui tôi yếm nay có hòa ở với chủ ye phải cho hồi ye hiu chăm đồng bua ya chế với yếm cho chế bang cái miền thôi chuối có mới cho chế bang cái miền bua họ cho yếm nay con một con bàn bua ya mai cho hồ phê đối hòa biển bùn 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 yếm này phá này con nó say những trẻ con như cần như hoa tỏi con bây giờ chúng như câu ở. Mine's gonna be a little bit different. I apologize. There's a lot of familiar faces, so all of you probably already heard my story or my family's story. So I'm gonna go at a different angle. I ask that you cooperate as much as you can, as long as your health permits you. If you would either close your eyes during my time or refocus on the ground, on a chair. I just don't want you to focus on the panel up here, because I think that it's important for each of you to experience or try to follow the storyline rather than who I am today, which may confuse or may not have the same impression or impact. Unsung heroes, a person whose bravery is unknown or acknowledged or unacknowledged. First of all, I appreciate and want to say thank you to our servicemen and women as well as to our families for their service and day-to-day sacrifice in order to provide the freedom we have today. Secondly, I would like to thank and acknowledge grandparents, parents, elders, uncles, and brothers for their service during the Vietnam War, Secret War, which has made it possible for me and others to be here today. It was a painful, frightening, and traumatic experience because some of us have lost loved ones during the war or the journey escaping from Laos to Thailand. However, I am still grateful because it has given me opportunities, freedom, and a new beginning. For those that don't know me, my name is late Mey Chao, also known as Mey Chao-Lee. I am the eldest daughter, giving me the first part of my name, Mey. My parents are first-generation immigrants, and I am 1.5 generation. I came to the United States before my teenage years. I am Mien, or Mien, the formal. Each of us have our own stories. Some have positive memories and laughter, others with sadness and painful memories. When one hears Vietnam War, you see nodding of the head. But when you say the secret in Laos, you see confusion, and they know they don't know what you're saying, and confirmation of chaos. Imagine, in your own home, in your own background, your backyard, your town, your country, where little children are playing around, grandparents, women, pregnant women walking around, getting bombed at constantly, not knowing who's at risk of dying the next day, the next second, not knowing who your enemies are. Is your neighbor really your neighbor, or is it the communist soldier? Just imagine that as we take this journey through my family's life. And also keep in mind, I was a young child. The stories I tell you are my impression as a young girl. It may not be similar to you, but it's a young girl's memory. I was born in Nam Cha, Laos during the Secret War in Laos. My father, who was barely a teenager, served in the army before I was born. He continued to serve as a soldier after he and my mother married and has already given life to my younger brother and I. My maternal grandfather also served in the war. He was not fortunate enough to survive the war, leaving my grandmother and young children to escape from Laos. In the midst of chaos, in the midst of unknown. A specific memory, flashbacks I have about my grandfather consist of blood, violence, torture, flies swarming all over the village, and then death in the hands of the communist Pathet Lao soldiers. This is because he was buried halfway in the middle of the village, after being tortured for many, many months. From there, our family was subject to numerous threats, tortures, as well as communist soldiers coming to the village and into our home whenever they wanted. They were there to do their job, to protect their family, to capture soldiers who fought with the CIA, who fought against them. They tortured children and women. They took our foods, destroyed our homes, our gardens, and our livestock. They killed our people. Didn't matter the gender or the age. After my maternal grandfather passed away, my father went into hiding in order to protect his own life, along with my mom, myself, and my younger brother. My mother was left alone to defend for herself and two little ones. She lived in fear, not knowing when the communist soldiers would return to interrogate her or torture her in order to find Dad. She also had the responsibility to provide food and shelter for us. I remember having oranges shoved into my mouth in the middle of the night in order to keep me quiet while we were attempting to escape from Laos to Thailand, crossing the Mekong River. I remember failing at least once, not being able to escape to Thailand and returning to a home that has been ransacked because neighbors came into our home and garden and took what we couldn't take with us. I remember seeing dead bodies on the trails and heard gunshots. I remember the smell of blood and of dead bodies, as well as the frightened facial expression on my family's face like it just happened yesterday. I couldn't understand it at the time, but I've been able to put the pieces together after talking to my parents when I became an adult. I remember going into an isolated, deserted area and was forced with a bandana used to cover my mouth. I saw my mother, another woman, and a soldier rushing us to a hidden cave. I thought we were going to die that day. My mother and the young woman was frightened for their life as well. I can still smell the dead body odors on the soldier's shirt that made my intestines and stomach turn just as it does right now. My heart was pounding, sweating, and the thought that it was the end of my life. To this day, it still frightens me as I remember this. I thought it was our turn. It was my turn. I finally shared these memories with my mother and father and was told the soldier was my father, who was in hiding. My mother, her friend, and I were there to give food to him. My mother cried and said she had no idea I was impacted by the war and was frightened as she was. My mother also confided that she was frightened because she also didn't know the soldier was my father at the time because the rumors that we heard was that he was already dead. Apparently, my mother and I had made numerous failed trips into the jungle right before the battlefield to provide the basic necessities to keep Dad alive. One can look at it as that day being a frightened day, but another way to look at it was a blessed day. A blessed day because my mom finally confirmed Dad was alive. Among my father's group of soldiers, he was the only one that survived, with the exception of his commanding officer. Dad was a young boy with hardly any military experience. He was lost, he was hungry, and he was in a hideout for months. When he finally escaped from the battlefield of the communist soldiers, he was so gaunt-looking that no one, including his own father, couldn't recognize him. Friends and family, as well as village members, were crying because his own father said, "Younger brother, who are you? What is your name? I've never seen you before." Could you imagine your own father asking you this question? After you survived so much or did so much to survive to see your family? When I was in grad school, I had the opportunity to be in a classroom. The professor was a psychologist. He showed a movie called Split Horn. I've seen this video, and I actually have used this video for trainings myself. However, that day, it was doomsday for me. Maybe it was in the midst of wartime discussions, pain, suffering, discrimination. But as they were sharing, the professor said something in the lines of honoring the Hmong people for their fight during the Secret War. I was enraged because the video clipping that they show were Mien, young boys, holding huge guns, and the face that I saw was my father's face. I ended up teaching the class that day because I was bawling, I was crying. I told the professor that was not appropriate. He apologized, and I ended up teaching the cultural competency class that day. My refugee camp experience is a little bit different. Again, it's coming from a young girl's perspective. My family and I stayed at Panatnikom, Thailand camps for several months. Our stay there consists of my parents learning the basic English words, learning how to turn on the stove, electricity, learning how to use a pen, learning how to sign their name, the alphabets. They were learning the values of money because of where they're from, the villages, the mountains. They don't have money. You don't need to know the value of money. You barter for services or for goods. For the most part of the life in Pennaticum, it was fair or pleasant depending on which tribe group you were. But I think because we were Mien, a lot of the individuals don't recognize us, so we're always pushed to the side, or what they say, we get the leftovers. And they get the hill tribes mixed up. They change our last names to make it fit, to make it where it's comfortable for them. They change our birth dates, the year we were born, which is why you see a lot of Mien or Asian folks' birthdays of June 15th. I think we should have a birthday party on June 15th for everybody. In the refugee camp, after being retrained and how to reprocess our brain and what's right and what's not right, and how to become the U.S. citizen, we had numerous medical checkups. And once that was done, we were sponsored by a pastor and his wife, along with a Christian church family, to Olympia, Washington. That was probably December of 1982. There was a lot of, if you want to focus on us, it's fine now. It's just in the beginning, I wanted you to see the journey of my previous life. In the United States, it was very different. Where we came to a town of primarily Caucasians, English-speaking, small town. So it was very difficult to communicate. So we utilized Sesame Street to learn the English language. Sesame Street was my best friend, but I don't think it's playing anymore. I remember specifically, my hair was cut very short. I have brothers, 2 younger brothers. So my sponsor automatically assumed that I was a boy. They enrolled me in a boys' school. That was interesting and fun. I had boys' underwears on. My husband probably doesn't want to know that. In class, I saw the kids raising their hand. Whenever the teacher spoke, they raised their hands. So I raised my hand. I wanted to comply. But then she would pick on me, and I didn't know what to say. I got in trouble. When we were in PE, you had to change clothes, and quickly enough, the teacher found out I wasn't a boy and talked to my parents and the sponsor about it. I think my parents got in a lot of trouble. But I don't think it was fair because they didn't know what they were doing. And unfortunately, they didn't have an interpreter at that time to ask the specific questions. What I wanted to talk about is acculturation, the process of acculturation. I think that in class, in schools, I think a lot of children get bullied. But when you're from a different country, you don't know the language, clothing is unfamiliar to you. Clothing is familiar in that it's limited in terms of the products, but in this country the clothing is more diverse. So when you go to school, you wear certain outfits and you get targeted, you get picked on. So a lot of the comments were like, you're not good enough to be here, you don't belong in this country, a lot of discriminatory statements, which I won't repeat today. In 4th grade, when I enrolled in 4th grade, I didn't even know the alphabets. I didn't know how to read or write. So they got me, I guess it's called bilingual aids. They tutored me. By the end of 4th grade, I had Excel, all of their mathematics, the multiples, like the 1 times 1 factors, the tens. And at that point, it was good for that I mastered that, but at the same time, then I became even more of an outcast because I didn't belong with the other classmates who were also refugees, and I also didn't really belong with mainstream classmates. So that was hard for me. And also my mother was very focused on raising me to be a very traditional Mien mom or Mien future wife. My father, on the other hand, recognized that I have certain talents that probably should be utilized. So between mom and dad advocated a lot for me to go to school and try to compromise with my mom. So because of my father, I believe I was able to continue higher education with his support, and I'm glad that he made that possible for me. A lot of I'll share 2 examples, and I think I'll cut my time at that point. One of the most impacting incident I had was I was probably about 8 months pregnant with our 2nd child. My husband was working 2 jobs. He was in college. I was working 1 job. I happened to be home early that day, went to the mailbox to open the mailbox to get my letters. A man, an elderly man, a Caucasian elderly man came and approached me. And I was frightened for my life, to be honest. I was in a sports car. I was proud of my sports car. We paid for it, and I opened the mailbox, got my letter, got in the car. But he grabbed my door and wouldn't close it and wouldn't let me get into the vehicle. And I don't know if he was intoxicated at that time, but he was very angry. To the point where I felt that my life was in danger, and he told me to go back to my country, and he told me what he had to do to get his life back to the United States, and that he was very, very angry to see someone like me here in his own home soil. For some reason, I spoke up after taking a step back. I spoke back to him. I said to him, I said, it's really unfortunate that you're feeling this way, because I also feel the same, but in a different perspective, in that I lost my grandfather, my paternal grandfather. I kind of explained to him what had happened. He cried. He was in tears, and I didn't know he was my neighbor. Months later, I think he thought about it, and he apologized. And unbeknownst to me, we also work for the same department. Out of that, there's a lot of fruit out of that, because I understand the anger. I understand because when you're angry at that point, you want to, not that it's appropriate, but you share it, and then sometimes you regret it. So out of that, the friendship developed, and a lot of education developed, and I started doing a lot of speaking in community events to share about the Mien and Lao people. The second one was not too long ago. I would say about maybe 2 years ago. For a long time, I have a lot of experiences with discrimination because of the color of my skin, where I was from. But for a good period of time, I didn't experience that. So 2 years ago, and I'm more outspoken now. I'm not as shy as I was. I was at a gas station. A group of young folks came out of their vehicle. I was gassing up my car. They kept making remarks. I said, you know what, May, just ignore them. It's okay. It's not worth it. But I couldn't ignore them because there were so many of them. They just kept going. So I finally took my phone, took a picture of their vehicle with a license plate. I figured if something happens, somebody would know, in terms of calling the police. I only did it for my safety, but they came over and asked me why I took the picture. I said, well, what do you think? And they said, well, you got to call the police. I said, only if something happens to me. And then they said, well, nothing's going to happen to you. Can you delete it? And I looked at the young boy, and he looked frightened, so I deleted the picture. And I said, I'll see you in the ER someday. Someday you'll need my help. I said that, and they thought about it, and I didn't think anything much about it. But 6 months into it, I was called into the ER for a consultation. Didn't recognize who he was. I did my consultation. I gave my instructions of what I thought to the doctor. The doctor did what they needed to do. 2 months later, the young man and his family came into my office, apologized, and I still didn't get what he was saying. I said, you don't need to apologize to me. That's part of my work. He said, well, you did say, I'll see you in the ER. I said, I did? I don't remember saying that. He explained the scenario, and then he wanted to know how I came to this country and how he can be a better person, and how he can advocate his friends and his church groups to react more properly when they meet someone that's a threat to them or unknown to them. So, yes, there were a lot of sacrifices, a lot of emotional pain, a lot of anger, a lot of hatred. But at the same time, through that process, there will be healing. Some healings are sooner than later. Hopefully it's sooner for most of us. But we're all human. We all face similar pain. The circumstances may be different, but the pain is the same. And if we keep that in mind, I think the world will be at more peace, and we will be more understanding and more tolerance of each other. And I'm very grateful for the McConnell Foundation as well as the steering committee for making this event to happen so that we can at least start the dialogue and to get to that healing together. Thank you for your time.